Recently, I was observing the insanity of my own mind. It's one of my favorite pastimes to just sit there and observe it in all of its ridiculousness. But in doing that, I sort of had a realization about how it operates due to the influence on it in this realm, wherever it is and whatever is actually going on here. The influence turns your mind into an attorney or lawyer, however you want to describe that profession. And by influence, I mean both direct, via the interaction of consciousness with reality itself, and also everything that's been placed within it in terms of technology and media. From a young age, that influences our minds to behave a certain way. I just made a community post about this as it related to the presidential debate in the United States of America. But that's a great example of how the media trains your mind to behave a certain way, like an attorney. What were both of those characters doing on that stage? Well, they were presenting their case. They were very agitated, and the undercurrent of their words was an angry vibration, right? They're calling out the other side. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me present my case to you for why this other person is so bad and wrong and terrible, right? That's the undercurrent of what's going on there. It's training your mind to keep score with everything and everyone that you come into contact with. And then you present your case against them. And this can be as innocent as a relationship where you have a disagreement with someone, whether that's romantic or a friendship or some other kind of relationship with another human. You keep the score before you're aware of what's really going on or have any kind of understanding of the influence on your mind. And some disagreement comes up between you and the other person, and during the argument or the disagreement, whatever, you sit there and you say, oh, well, you did this and this and this and this. What about that? How can you possibly tell me that I'm doing something wrong here when you've done all of this? Look at this list I just provided you with. And it's insane, right? Each person involved goes back and forth with this scoreboard of all the things that you've accumulated in the time that you've known this person. And this is how people interact with each other. Especially in romantic relationships, they have these fights. I observe them all the time with the people I know, and they have disagreements, and you'll see them bring up these things from the past where it's, oh, well, you did that, and that, and that. How can you possibly talk to me about this? You're the bad one. Hopefully you can see how that mirrors the debate scene, but also hopefully you can see how that is like an attorney standing in a courtroom addressing the jury, whether they're a prosecutor or a defense attorney. It doesn't matter. They're doing the same thing. The prosecutor is building the case, pointing out all of the reasons why this person is guilty. And the defense attorney is doing the same thing, just saying, hey, here are all the reasons why the prosecutor is wrong and my client is innocent. They didn't do any of this. And you're doing that in your own mind, depending on the context. When you're trying to defend yourself against someone else, that's when you're in more of the defense attorney mode, and you're pointing out all the flaws in the case that's being made against you. And part of how you do that is you pick apart the other person in ways that don't relate to what they're saying. Or maybe it does, but it's indirect. You're trying to find some other way to distract from what they're telling you because it is most likely a truth about something you have done that was less than ideal or whatever the case is. This is not saying that every time you get accused of something, the other person is right. I'm just more trying to get at the mindset that everyone is coming towards communication with each other with. And it's one thing to observe it in other people, but what you really would be wise to focus on is observing it in your own mind and how it functions in different contexts. Sometimes that stream of consciousness will start to build you up and try to make you think that you're so great. Oh, I'm so amazing. Yes, I'm so much better than all of these other people. And then you sit there and you say, wait a second, I see a case being made here, thought after thought after thought, and I know intuitively that this is not true or accurate in any way because I observed myself doing something earlier today that doesn't set me apart from anyone else on planet Earth. For example, this morning I went to the bathroom and had a bowel movement, and I'm pretty sure that almost every person on planet Earth had a bowel movement today, unless they have some kind of stomach issue, right? But for the most part, we're all doing the same thing along those lines. So how can I be above anyone else if that's the case? Well, these are little things that you throw in there when the mind is trying to convince you of things like this. And invariably, you are influenced in this direction when you're particularly close to some kind of truth or some kind of experience that's going to lead you to become a better version of who you used to be. That's when you're really influenced in that direction. And then other times it will lean into depression or feeling down, and it'll tell you all the reasons why you should be depressed. Yes, look at what's going on in the world. Look at how all these people are acting. Yes, this is very bad. You should hate them. Look how terrible they all are. Hopefully you get the idea. It's the literal devil's advocate in your mind. The devil's attorney, as it were. Satan's lawyer is in your mind making cases for why you should think things that go against the original design, the original intent of that which created you. Hopefully you can see in the way that I described that how it's happening on one level via the influence on your mind, and then on another level within that, it's happening in your relationships with other people and how you communicate with them. And simultaneously, that influence on the mind is influencing both minds that are communicating at the same time. And this is how it is able to coordinate disorder within the system as a whole. And indeed, that's why the media is structured like it is, to help aid that disorder, to get people arguing over things that do not matter at all and put them at odds with each other in this way. You add that to the scoreboard, as it were, right? And then you can pull that out when you're in some kind of disagreement with this person or having some kind of issue, and you can say, oh, well, yeah, but I know that you believe this, and I know that that's a bad thing. So that's one mark in the scoreboard here for why you are going to lose this argument and why I am better than you. You see? And I bring all of this up because at some point along the way, I had the realization that being aware, however you want to define that as, doesn't mean anything if you are unable to put it into practice in the actual real world. And the easiest way to do this, at least in one respect, is through your interactions with other people and how you communicate with them. Now, of course, no one is perfect. We all have our moments where we lose sight of all of this and get sucked into something. But in my experience, the key to understanding all of this is to rest your case, as it were, right? What do the attorneys do when they're done giving their case? Well, they'll say something along the lines of, Your Honor, the defense rests, or the prosecution rests. And what I have come to understand is that I rest my case, but I never make one in the first place. If you understand my meaning there, no, I rest my case. I'm not making these cases anymore. This is not a part of my reality at all. I don't engage in this. And when you pull yourself out of Satan's courtroom, as it were, both literally in terms of your interactions and also in your own mind, that's when you begin to become something different that, ironically enough, even if somebody wanted to argue with you over something, they'll find it very difficult to do so because they're never drawn to that vibration in the first place. Because you're giving off an energy to them that is subconsciously safe. They understand intuitively, even if they can't process that in any kind of rational way that they could describe. They understand it in the sense that they know you're not going to try to take advantage of them. You're not going to be keeping score with them if they tell you anything. You're not going to use anything that they tell you against them later. And they feel this as a kind of safety that will remove a lot of the underlying currents of energy that would lead them to act out against you in some way. And this is very important to understand, especially with people who talk about being targeted in certain ways, or how nothing ever seems to go right for them and everything is against them in this world. And it's kind of like, well, hold on a second now. You have to observe your own mind and the influence that it is having on other people around you. How are you approaching them? Are you engaging in what I have been describing here? Are you subconsciously even provoking people without your knowledge? And yet you blame them for why you're constantly in the situations that you are in? Again, I'm not excusing other people's behavior. We are surrounded by insanity. People are insane. What I'm telling you, though, is that when you transcend Satan's courtroom in your own mind, it will begin to have an effect on your interactions with other people to the point where you won't experience a lot of what you have experienced in the past because you will have transcended it in a certain sense. The energy that you carry will no longer allow those types of things to manifest around you. It's like a repellent or some kind of energetic bubble that permeates everything you come into contact with and removes the standards that has been programmed into most of society in terms of how people interact with each other. And of course, this is very difficult as it relates to people that you have a long history with. You have a very long, detailed scoreboard that lists everything that they've ever done to you. And man, you can bring that up right away anytime there's something going on. Oh, remember when you did this, that, and the other thing? And it's like, well, this is one of the biggest problems here, is the inability to forgive. And there's a difference between forgiveness and excusing someone's unacceptable behavior, right? That's not what I'm trying to tell you to do here. I'm not telling you to accept something that's unacceptable. Rather, understand that the thing that was unacceptable most likely happened in the first place because your mind was not interacting with reality as it was originally designed to do because of the influence on it. And obviously you're interacting with other people who have the same influence on them. It's no wonder that everyone is insane with that situation going on. Again, there's a lot of nuance here. I have to account for the fact that sometimes horrible things happen to people that otherwise do not deserve it, especially children, right? So I'm not excusing that type of behavior with what I'm talking about here. I'm just trying to meet you where you are now. There's nothing you can do about that other stuff that happened to you or anyone else. It happened in the past. It was a product of times when you weren't aware of any of this stuff. The only thing you can do is focus on right now and how you're interacting with everyone else. The collective inability of human beings to move on from the past is part of our problem. And this is especially relevant for those of you who are just getting into the conspiracy theory information. Maybe you're relatively new to all of this, and you probably are kind of in that mindset. I remember I was in it too, where you're piling up this list of examples of how evil everything is around you, and there is no disputing these facts, but if you're not careful, you will fall into the trap of pointing your finger at them, whoever they are, right? And lose sight of the fact that the whole point of discovering this information was to improve yourself, to transcend the situation that you were in the first place. And what I mean by that is if you spend your time focused on pointing your finger at those who are doing this, and you just constantly are listing that out to other people and thinking that you have found the truth while you do that, as you continue to act in the very same way that you always have, well, you've lost the plot. You're not discovering anything that is true, and you're not aware in any way. You're just replacing information that used to be in your mind with new information, and you're shifting the blame from who you used to think was responsible for everything that went wrong to new people who are now responsible for everything that goes wrong in your life. In other words, it's both. The entities that have created these conditions on planet Earth have to accept responsibility for what they have done, and we likewise have to accept responsibility for playing our role within it. Because there's no way that it will ever be fixed or transcended unless we recognize our role within it and we stop pointing our fingers at them as the sole reason that it is continuing. As if we just got them to stop doing what they're doing, everything would magically be fixed overnight. No, we're still insane. We have to recognize the insanity. And I just thought this was a really good way to look at your stream of consciousness and the thoughts that run through it. In the sense that you can look at a string of thoughts and think to yourself, hold on a second here. Am I acting like an attorney defending something in court right now? Am I acting like I'm in front of a jury and I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, let me run through all the reasons here for why I am actually correct and I'm not doing anything wrong? And right, you can see that in so many different ways, not just with personal relationships with other human beings. I mean, this is just as true with your own relationship with yourself, right? And your addictions and everything that you do along those lines that you justify. You look at the thoughts as they go through your mind and you can think to yourself, hold on a second, am I advocating for something here or am I being honest with myself? Because you'll notice when you're being honest with yourself, the thoughts are not so neatly placed one after the other in a way that makes this beautiful case for why you're right. You're constantly having thoughts that say, ooh, yeah, that's not good. I'm way off base there. I need to think about that part of this for why I might actually be wrong about what I'm saying. So it's just a neat little trick you can play on yourself to observe your thoughts in a way that will help you see if you're feeding into the insanity. And I really think this is what being aware is. It's just simply saying, I rest my case. I will no longer be involved in these trivial human affairs that I've been programmed to think are the things that I should pay attention to or be focused on or have some opinion about. I am a sinner living in a fallen world, and there is no way that I will ever build a case for me being right in this place. There is no universe where I am correct living as I am living in this world. That is the responsibility I must accept. And then at that point, maybe you can start to get somewhere as far as being aware or being something different that someone could actually look at and factually say, okay, yeah, you're maybe operating from a different space than most people with this mentality. I rest my case. I'm not making any more cases. That's done. And this pulls you out of gossip too, right? Because people will come to you with their problems and they'll say, oh, what about this thing that they did and the other thing? Can you believe this person? And you're just kind of looking at them like, I know you want me to take your side and engage in this thing that's going on right now, this gossip that you all love so much, but no, I rest my case. I'm not involved in this anymore. I'll give you advice that relates directly to you and your role in things and try to give you a different perspective along those lines. Of course, I'll always do that, but I will not be involved in building cases against other people because I've done probably everything that they've done and then some. There's no place for me to build a case against them in this world. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. It's just something that kind of is a rough draft in my head that I figured I would share with you guys. And maybe it'll help you like it has me in terms of detaching myself from the insanity. And it's very hard to do that, especially in your own mind with your stream of consciousness and your thoughts as you observe them. This is a way to kind of look at it and say, oh, wait, hold on a second. I feel like I'm building a case here. Is this something that I'm doing or something else is influencing me to do, right? And this is a similar tactic that I use when I'm feeling particularly angry or agitated about something, and I'll sit there and say, oh yeah, let the hate flow through you, Steve. Yeah, that feels good, doesn't it? Just as a joke, to laugh to myself about how I'm acting in that moment. That's sort of how they portray it in Star Wars, which again is manipulation, right? Star Wars is exactly what I'm talking about here. It is that which is in control of this reality currently, playing both the good side and the bad side, quote unquote, right? It's playing the Jedi and the Sith in your mind. In the same way that they show it to you with the angel on one side of your shoulder and the devil on the other side of your shoulder in all those cartoons, right? I've gone into that in the past before too. It's playing both sides, and it doesn't matter which side you're on as long as you're playing the game, as long as you're in the courtroom on the prosecution or the defense of whatever the situation is, on whatever scale you're referring to. Again, this can be referring to the littlest, insignificant personal relationships that you have, just as much as it can refer to our collective relationship as a species with reality itself. But as with most of these things, there is some truth that they put in those films that are designed to manipulate you. And I think that's one truth that's in Star Wars, where it's, yeah, the dark side, quote unquote, is when they fully tap into the hate, right? And the just anger. Yes, let it take you over, and then you'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And that's in terms of the plot, where they're tapping into the Force. But in your own life, in reality, that's when you are the most weak that you can possibly be, is when you tap into that anger and it transforms you into something that you were not designed to be in any way, shape, or form. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't be agitated or have some kind of angry emotion that's justified in the moment, of course, but it's a momentary thing that's designed in a flight or fight context to save your life, right? Those are the situations where that is a valid feeling to have. But when you're just alive and engaging with other people, that's when it makes you the weakest, and that's when it destroys more than it helps you create. So this is just a trick along those lines that I use in my own mind to see my thoughts as they form and understand if I'm potentially being manipulated in a given moment to think a certain way and then act out in a way that is congruent with the thoughts that I'm having. I rest my case. I am no longer in the court system in any way, shape, or form. At least I strive to be. I'm never even making a case in the first place anymore because I'm in no place to do so. And I have no interest in being involved in the game in that way anymore. So, I don't know. Just spitballing a little bit here. Hopefully that was useful in some way. That's it. Later.